I have a red alert corruption story for you today. This is the worst of government deceit. I previously reported to you that Dr. Rick Bright, former Deputy Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response for Health and Human Services, Dr. Rick Bright says he was pushed out of his role. And he believes it's because he was regularly going to the Trump administration and saying, we're unprepared to deal with coronavirus. He believes it's because he refused to go out and promote the use of hydroxychloroquine as a coronavirus treatment, despite Donald Trump doing it publicly and despite the Trump administration pushing Dr. Rick Bright to do it. He has been working on a whistleblower complaint, which he filed yesterday. It's devastating, and we'll get to it in a moment. But the corruption is that 3 days before, Donald Trump fired the Inspector General of Health and Human Services, who is the Inspector General that would have been receiving and investigating this complaint from Dr. Rick Bright, Christy Grimm. She was replaced with a total Trump loyalist. What a coincidence. Trump couldn't stop the whistleblower complaint, so he made sure that the person handling the complaint, investigating the complaint, would be someone loyal to him rather than someone whose loyalty is to the facts and to reality. Grimm was already on Trump's bad side because she was willing to publish a report in January saying, hey, we have huge shortages of PPE. We're short on testing supplies. If we're going to deal with a pandemic, we are woefully unprepared. Trump didn't like it, and this was a great opportunity to get her out before she had the opportunity to handle Dr. Rick Bright's whistleblower complaint. Trump cleared her out. There will be no dissension in the ranks. Trump must be placated all the time, constantly, or you will be fired. So that gets us to yesterday. Dr. Rick Bright files his whistleblower complaint. And if even 10% of what's in it is true, it is absolutely stunning. It is everything we feared. It's everything we've been suspecting was going on in the Trump administration in the lead up to the virus in December, in January. And Dr. Rick Bright explains that early coronavirus warnings that he brought to the administration were ignored. Let's check out some of what he said yesterday during a press conference.
Time after time, I was pressured to ignore or dismiss expert and scientific recommendations, and instead to award lucrative contracts based on political connections. In other words, I was pressured to let politics and cronyism drive decisions over the opinions of the best scientists we have in government. And ultimately, I was removed from my position because of my continued insistence that the government invest funds allocated by Congress, hard-earned taxpayer dollars, to address the COVID-19 and invest them into safe and scientifically vetted solutions.
So this is absolutely devastating. You can listen to the 6 or 7 minutes during which he outlines everything that he alleges went on, but I'll tell you some of what it includes. Dr. Rick Bright says he went to the administration and said, we're short on supplies and masks. Trump officials didn't believe him, not enough to do anything about it. He was right, of course. He says that as his warnings about the virus were confirmed, the indifference that he was experiencing turned to outright hostility against him. Dr. Rick Bright says he was pressured to give lucrative contracts to whoever the Trump administration wanted. I've told you that there's been a lot of money made on coronavirus, and one of the ways is by getting contracts with the government to produce PPE or other things, sweetheart deals, as we might call them. Rick Bright says, he's blowing the whistle. He says, they came to me. They told me, give the deals to these particular companies. And of course, we already knew Dr. Rick Bright says he was pressured to promote hydroxychloroquine as a treatment for coronavirus. He pushed back. He said, it's not scientifically sound. We should really limit it to these trials, much like a dozen other medications that we're testing. The Trump administration wanted chloroquine promoted far and wide. He refused to do it, and he was transferred out of that role. Now, the legal argument is going to be more complicated for Dr. Rick Bright's lawyers. His lawyers say when he was warning the administration about the lack of PPE and the lack of coronavirus danger more broadly, that his actions were protected by the Whistleblower Protection Act. That is a questionable case to make. It's going to be difficult. I mean, intuitively, certainly, colloquially, it's accurate. But the counterpoint would be he may have been ignored when he was raising alarm, but it didn't violate the Whistleblower Protection Act. You could argue also that he wasn't fully ignored. but it's going to be a difficult case to prove. So we have two issues here, really. We have Dr. Rick Bright being pushed out after being ignored. That's tragic. It's horrifying. It builds on what we've suspected for some time, that the Trump administration did get early warnings about the virus, but ignored them. At this point, we know that that took place, and Dr. Rick Bright was just one piece of that. The second piece is Trump fired the person who would be investigating Rick Bright's assertions. What use to us are inspectors general if the president will just fire the ones that actually investigate things Trump doesn't want investigated? Now, we could deal with that. There's a bill that's meant to protect inspectors general. Two Democrats wrote it, Senator Chris Murphy and Senator Jim Cooper. And under this bill, the inspectors general can't just be removed from office for political reasons. They could only be removed for, quote, permanent incapacity, inefficiency, neglect of duty, malfeasance, or conviction of a felony, or conduct involving moral turpitude. That is a much higher standard than Trump wants to stop their investigation, so he fires them. So we have a bill that's been written which would deal with this. Good luck passing it in a Republican Senate, which reminds us of the importance of helping Democrats take control of the Senate in November. Now, of course, Fox News, OAN, whoever, Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, they're going to say about a bill like that, look at these Democrats trying to prevent bad people from being removed. Of course, that's not what they're trying to do. So this is all catastrophic at every level. And sadly, when we get to the question of consequences, it's up to us. I mean, listen, who's going to do anything to Trump here? All we can do is remove him in November. We've got to vote this garbage of an administration out in November because Trump's fired numerous inspectors general. There have been no consequences. Trump has manipulated the people in charge of even potentially overseeing the actions or inactions of the federal government. Doesn't make a difference, really. I mean, it has not. There have been no consequences. Okay, a couple people went to prison or are going to prison for short sentences, but the big malfeasance of the constant corrupt crony capitalism and distortions of reality from this administration while covering up their misdeeds by firing people and lying and doing all sorts of other things, there's really been no consequence to that. It's up to us. It's up to us to remove this garbage in November. I hope that we will. Let me know what you think. I'm on Twitter at @DPakman. Make sure you're following me there and make sure you are signed up to the all-new David Pakman Show newsletter by signing up at davidpakman.com.